Yes, again, a warm welcome to each one of you who came here to take care of your lives in this way this morning by practicing Dhamma. Buenos días, Amparo. Lo siento porque Claudia no puede asistir esta mañana, así que no va a haber interpretación.
Listo.
Lo siento. Hasta luego. Yeah, no Spanish interpretation this morning because Claudia can't come today. Hello, Kat, welcome. All right, beautiful. So this is our Sunday Sounds of Dhamma program. And before I get started, I have some announcements because we're going to begin the summer schedule. Not today, but starting next week, we'll start the summer schedule. And that means that this program is going to be a little bit longer. Some folks had suggested it might be nice to have a little bit more time for meditation and a little bit more time for questions. So we're going to start 15 minutes earlier and end 15 minutes later. So it'll be 9:15 to 10:45 Eastern US time. And all this will get posted to the website, just so you know. Same link as always. And the Tuesday tune-in program is going to be paused for a while. We're going to begin to do it as by invitation, a series here and there, more like 4 or 5 talks together in a more like a series or a class format. And Wednesdays and Thursdays are still happening as usual. And Friday evening sutta contemplation is going to move to Thursdays. So I know that's a lot of information. Again, it'll all be on the website. It'll be posted here on the front door of the vihara. It will get included in the newsletter, which is going to come out in the next week or so. So, and if you're not already signed up for the newsletter, you can do that on the website too, down in the lower part of the homepage. Hello, Kanti.
Hello.
Yeah, so what else? We also have a brunch happening for folks who are here in this area, Sunday, July 13th, hosted by Kodo. And an art workshop on Saturday, July 12th. I'm going to actually present my art history thesis. So I did a master's degree last year in Buddhist art history and conservation, studying 6th and 7th century Indian bronzes. So I'm going to do a short workshop, maybe 2 hours, 2.5 hours on that. Just sharing with you what I learned and a little something about Buddhism in that time. What was Buddhism like in that time, in that place? Okay, so those are all the announcements for today. And I thought that we could just do a very, very simple mindfulness of breathing today. And at some point during the mindfulness of breathing meditation, I'm going to invite you to check in on the feeling tones, on whether the sensations are pleasant or neutral or unpleasant. And just noticing how that changes over time, whether that changes over time. So for now, we can go ahead and begin by establishing a relaxed and balanced meditation posture. Sensing the natural stability of the body by tuning in to the weight of the body on your seat. And moving the attention up the spine to come into an upright position in which the bones are carrying the weight of the body. So the muscles might soften. And perhaps by now the sensations of the breath breathing the body have started to come into your awareness. Just resting the attention on the sensations of the breath. Perhaps noticing whether the sensations are neutral or pleasant or unpleasant. aware of change moment by moment. The breath coming in and going out. Staying curious about the sensations of the breath, breathing the body. Beautiful. So we're going to move right into the Dhamma talk. Okay. What you see on your screen there, that's not the Dhamma talk. That's the homage. That's the homage to Buddha, the historical person. Pardon? Or the sheet is over there, if you guys need the sheet. If you prefer that, the sheet's up there on the top of the. Homage to the Blessed One, the fully awakened one, the fully enlightened one. And then Buddhang, meaning the historical person, also the quality of awakening itself, you could say. Dhamma, meaning the teachings and the reality that those teachings are pointing to, or the truths that those teachings are pointing to. And the Sangha, the vast, vast community of folks on this path of waking up. So everyone online, please feel free to chant along with your mics muted. And everyone here in person, you're also welcome to chant along. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. Beautiful. There are aspects of human experience that are intuitive, aspects of our experience that aren't based in an analytical or even a verbal understanding. This is naturally the case. It's not something that we need to concoct or develop in some way. In colloquial language, we talk about this as a gut feeling or a gut check or a hunch or just intuition. Sometimes people associate it with the feminine, although I'm not sure that I agree with that aspect. I think that is universally true for humans. And it's interesting because the smart folks over there at Merriam-Webster, they define intuition as a direct knowledge or cognition without rational thought or inference, just as we might expect. But this word direct knowledge, this phrase direct knowledge, rings a bell perhaps for Buddhists. That's a very important concept on the path of practice. And so in the Dhamma, the way that I'm proposing, the way that we speak about intuition is with this concept called Vedana, 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 Vedana. And Vedana is usually translated as feeling tone. right? It's translated as, um, is understood as the the knowing of whether any given experience is pleasant or unpleasant or indeterminate instantly before there is even the perception of what the thing is, and before there is any sort of response or reaction to that. That's how Vedana is described in the early Buddhist teachings. And of course, there's a spectrum, right? So, from the blissed out of your gourd, most pleasant of all pleasant experiences, uh, I highly recommend certain meditations for that, if that's what you're looking for, to the most excruciatingly painful, whether physically or mentally, yeah, and everything in between, right? Neutral meaning sometimes indeterminate, like we can't tell. It doesn't have enough charge to it, so to speak, that we can't tell. Although I think that once you develop that capacity for observing neutral Vedana, you see that neutral is an actual setting, so to speak, or an actual experience. So this mental quality is attached to all experience, is attached to everything that comes into the mind to be known. And I want to make the clear distinction that is not the same as liking and disliking the thing, whatever it is that's being known. That's another layer. That's the reaction or the response that happens after the feeling tone, after the Vedana has arisen. So sometimes I use the example of hot food. Some people like very spicy food, even though it's painful. It's literally painful in the mouth, right? Their eyes will be watering with the pain of the spicy food. And yet they like it. They're happy about it. They would eat it again. Not I, mind you, but some folks, even folks in my family, as a Latina, we didn't eat a lot of spicy food, but it's certainly part of our culture. So it's different than the liking and the disliking. It's something much more primitive, much more intuitive, much more immediate. And it's also this aspect of feeling tone is not inherent to the thing itself. It's actually our perception. Well, before perception, actually, if we use the proper phrase. It's our experience of it. It's not inherent to the thing itself. So if you walk in a room, or actually, my daughter and I were driving the other day, and we drove by this house, and she asked me if I liked the color of paint on the house. And I said, "Oh yeah, that's a nice color of paint." I said, "But not the door. That door is like Pepto-Bismol pink." Right? So even the color has this kind of immediacy of experience, positive or negative or neutral. Oh. And so what's interesting about this is that in popular culture, what we hear is that intuition is the thing to do. Intuition is very important. Intuition is the thing to follow, being in the flow. Oh, yeah, right. Some people are laughing because you know where I'm going with this, right? Right. But the Dhamma would say that that actually is part of the problem. That is part of the problem of suffering. Being swept away by your intuitive sense of whether a thing is okay or not okay or indeterminate. And the habit that we have is that we cling to these experiences, these feeling tones from the past, right? Somebody said something nasty to you last week and you're still thinking about it. Or 10 decades ago, if you live that long. Huh? For me, I notice in my training these days a little bit of what I call Vedana inflation. So I think to myself, oh, pizza would be nice. Pizza would be nice. And I have a slight positive Vedana about the idea of pizza. And then I have the pizza and I'm like, meh, it's pizza. It's not a big deal. Right? So, but noticing that is a training for me, right? Noticing the difference between my anticipation Vedana and the actual Vedana of the thing is a training for me. Because that anticipation Vedana represents a slight degree of clinging, right? Slight degree of craving. So grasping after future pleasant or unpleasant experiences also a habit pattern that I would suggest all of us have to one degree or another. In fact, addiction is about exactly that. Grasping at a future, potentially pleasant state over and over again, even when it's unpleasant. So we have these slight distortions that arise as a result of the way that we respond to the pleasant and the unpleasant, or perhaps gross distortions in some cases. It's interesting that we see Vedana time and time again. You folks are probably tired of hearing me talk about it because I talk about it frequently because it appears in many of the frameworks of early Buddhism, many of the forms of practice, or you could say the descriptions of the truths of a human life. In fact, in the Four Noble Truths, the Buddha starts out by saying there is dukkha. Okay, dukkha, we often translate it as suffering. It's something about unsatisfactoriness, or actually, more recently, I think about it in terms of the unresolved nature of life, that things can never, ever actually be fully resolved, and the angst that causes us. So the Buddha starts out by saying there is this quality in our lives, there is this experience in our lives, and then he says, and the cause of that is this Pali word tangha. Tangha literally means thirst. Or it also, interestingly, I found out for the first time just a few days ago, it also means drought. A drought. So you might think of the distress that's caused by drought, right? Nowadays, as well as in the historical past and the ancient past, thousands of years ago. So tanha, interestingly though, if you look at what the source of tanha is, the source of this word that literally means thirst, but actually is usually translated as this kind of craving or this kind of intense desire after different types of experience. In the teachings on dependent arising, the Buddha says that quality, that intense desire, is based on the feeling tones. So if we look at the root of what's there, if we look at the way that we can intentionally begin to practice with this, those feeling tones are very important information for us. Very important information. And what the Dhamma would say is, again, that we don't just let ourselves ride with the feeling tones. We don't just flow with the intuition that those experiences represent. Our practice with that is actually to develop a sense of equanimity with them. A sense of equanimity with all feeling tones, no matter how blissful or how painful. Mhm. And that is why equanimity is the last of the 7 factors of awakening. So I'm usually talking about the first few because those are the ones that we use quite frequently in meditation and they're more active. But equanimity is the last of them, the 7th factor of awakening. Mm. And there are 4 kinds of equanimity that I want to talk about today. 4. Which right away might come as a surprise. Maybe you thought there's only one kind of equanimity, right? But there's the first kind. The first kind is false equanimity. The first kind is false equanimity. It's actually an equanimity that says, I just don't care about this thing, right? It doesn't mean anything to me. In the Dhamma, this is described as equanimity which does not transcend the form. It's actually a false sense of equanimity because it's actually a form of aversion, very, very subtle form of aversion, right? Boredom is also like that. Oh, I'm bored. Boredom is really just a refusal to acknowledge the stimulation that's present because there's always stimulation present. Mm. So there's this first kind, the false kind of equanimity. And then there are 3 more kinds of equanimity. So the first kind of equanimity is equanimity based on diversity. And this is the kind that I generally talk about. So with the times that you've heard me talk about equanimity, I've talked about it's a kind of quality where you have your sea legs, right? Sea as in the ocean, sea legs, as in you are able to attend to, be with, be mindful of any form of experience that comes without being overwhelmed or without being set off balance. That is equanimity based on diversity. Yeah. And Vipassana training, this kind of meditation where we attend to a variety of different objects, we attend to whatever comes up in the order that it comes up, rather than focusing on certain kinds of categories of things or focusing on one thing in order to develop concentration. The other kind of meditation, vipassana, is building equanimity, right? It's saying, right, I can be here and be present for the most heinous of thoughts or the most pain in my knee or again, blissed out of my gourd or the so neutral stimulation that I can't find it or any of it, all of it, right? So just learning to attend to each thing without being knocked off your cushion is a practice of equanimity. It's that simple. That's why we say that any meditation is a useful meditation. Because there you were, and you attended to something, some part of it, right? Some part of it. So equanimity based on diversity, however, is said to be then surmounted, or you could say it is the basis for another kind of equanimity, which is the equanimity based on unity. Equanimity based on unity. And what this means is understanding the interconnectedness of things and understanding that each phenomena that is observed is there because it relates to some other phenomena. That's what we can observe when we watch things with equanimity of diversity. We can start to observe, oh yes, right. My cushion stays on the floor because of gravity, or because the cat is sitting on it, or because whatever is the condition that's there. Okay? We start to understand this. And understand that that interconnectedness is a unity of diversity, right? Is a unity of many things. It's not one solid block. Is a mistake to actually say by itself that all things are one. That's actually addressed in Middle Length Discourse number 1, right off the top of the bat, right off the bat. The Buddha says it is a mistake to say that all things are one, because that doesn't acknowledge actually that quality of interdependence, that quality of relationship that is happening among the many different phenomena. So typically in Zen we would say not one, not two. That's the way of speaking about it. Right? Or in the Pali language we talk about non-separation. So that's that's rather equanimity based on unity, which is said to be a higher form of equanimity than the equanimity based on diversity by itself. But finally, the third kind of equanimity is necessary. And that is equanimity based on atamayata, based on non-identification. Yeah. So when you have equanimity based on diversity, you might think to yourself, oh yeah, I can receive this phenomena and this phenomena and this phenomena and this phenomena. There is an observer and there is the one receiving it, and that's happening, and I can be steady with that, right? Or when there is equanimity based on unity, you think, I'm part of that unity, right? I'm interconnected. Those things are all true. It's not to say that those things are not true. But ultimately, the highest understanding is equanimity that understands that phenomena are phenomena are phenomena, that any form of distinction is actually also just a perception, just a part of our experience. All phenomena, you could think of all phenomena like grains of sand, universes of grains of sand. So it is an equanimity that it's I like this word, the way that Bhante Bhikkhu Bodhi, Venerable Bodhi, translates this word as non-identification. You could also say that it's prior to any kind of duality. This is a non-dual teaching within what are said to be the Pali Suttas or the Nikayas, or what people would call the Hinayana, which for many centuries has been criticized as not having any non-dual teachings. So there you go. This is a non-dual teaching. It's prior to the duality of anything, to up and down or any of that. If all things are mere phenomena, then they're indistinguishable. They are inseparable into dualities. You see where I'm going with this? So that is the way that we can think about the development or the cultivation of equanimity over time. And it all starts with, and so let me roll all the way on back to equanimity with diversity, because that is approachable very simply by looking at impermanence, right? Just as I was saying before, you can look at different aspects of your experience and see, there is an arising, there is a presence, there is a cessation. And that happens in a certain context. That's when you start to get to the unity. And so on. It will develop. It develops on its own if we carry out this practice of attending to impermanence. Change will teach you everything. It will teach you a profound understanding of why things are as they are. Just understanding change. And careful, because as I've said many times before, and as my root teacher would often say, it is not that there is one thing or one world or one universe that is changing over time. It is rather that moment by moment by moment, so quickly that we actually most of the time cannot perceive it, moment by moment, there is a new world. There is a completely different state of the world than existed a moment before. Mm. So again, not solidifying anything into a solid, permanent thing, even a permanent thing that's changing. Do you understand? This is the teaching of impermanence for us. And it is a teaching, again, that surprisingly leads to this beautiful capacity to attend to it all. To attend to it all with wisdom and stability. Mm. So I want to end with just a tiny bit of a quote from the Shin Ming. So Shin Ming is translated oftentimes as trust in mind, is a poem by a Chan master in the 6th century. He's Senkan is how he's referred to in the Japanese tradition that I am ordained in. And Sung San, I believe, is how it's pronounced in Chinese, is the correct pronunciation, as he would have said it, I hope. And this is just a little bit of the poem. It's a very, very beloved bit of literature that is actually used quite frequently in Zen temples. And it goes, this piece is from near the beginning. He says, when like and dislike are both absent, everything becomes clear and undisguised. When like and dislike are both absent, everything becomes clear and undisguised. So let me stop there before I read the next sentence. Remembering again that it's not that Vedana goes away. It's not that there aren't any feeling tones. It's that the like and dislike on top of that is seen through, is relinquished in favor of equanimity. So again, when like or dislike are actually, Musong, who wrote a very beautiful book about this poem, contemporary scholar, likes to translate it as when love and hate are both absent. But I don't think we have to get that intense about it, actually. It's the subtlety that we need to actually attend to oftentimes. And then he says this, so after, when like and dislike are both absent, everything becomes clear and undisguised. Make the smallest distinction, however, and heaven and earth are set infinitely apart. Make the slightest distinction, and heaven and earth are infinitely set apart. that is the heaven and earth that you experience. Right? The sweetness and the hell that you experience when you cling to something that is inherently changing, that is naturally arising and ceasing, that actually cannot define your experience. All right, so that was what I wanted to share with you today. And I think it's a bit of a heady one today, so I'm happy to take any comments or questions or reflections, anything on the meditation.
I I I got thinking about oh, I'll come back to you. Can you
Okay,
hear
Kanti.
me?
All right. So
I
you
don't
can,
have the
but
words
please,
in my
you can
mouth.
come back later on when you have your thoughts gathered.
Thank you.
No, okay, no problem. Yes, Deborah, please use the mic if you would. Thank you.
Thank you for that. That teaching was just so, as usual, and it just that going through the different parts of equanimity was, to me, it was very, very helpful. And at the end, with the non-identification, it brought me back to a teaching by Michelle McDonald, who's a teacher who lives out in Hawaii, who's developed this wonderful acronym, RAIN, recognize, allow, investigate, non-identify. And so it just, and it gave me a new understanding, of that non-identification. I know it's like not self, that, everyone feels like this or whatever. And then now this fourth form of equanimity, that whole process of, thinking along those steps when reactivity is happening. It was just, thank you. That was just deepening that wonderful teaching of hers that I've found so useful over the past 8 years or so.
Great.
Thank you.
Great. Yeah, I'm glad to hear it. Yes. Yeah, I think a lot of people have learned about rain and I have practiced that in different ways.
But Venerable Dhammadīpā, I think I have myself together now.
Okay.
I have been practicing in only either the early Buddhist teachings or the Theravada tradition. And, in the Thai Theravada tradition, I lived as an 8-precept nun, which in Thai itself is never mind, But anyway, my I have two guiding teachers, and one of them is Christina Feldman, and I'm sure you know of her, through the Retreat Center, the Forest Refuge, or BCBS, whatever. And she has her vihara is located in England. But she's always talked about how equanimity is the willingness to draw equally near to all things. And so, right?
So you hear, sorry, Kanti, just to interrupt there for one moment, but do you hear the duality in that?
Mm-hmm.
Who
Yes, we
draws
do.
near to what? Yeah. Who draws
Exactly.
near? Yeah.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
then the other thing is that the same thing applies to the Buddha, you know. But I see from your teaching, so the Nibbana is a the willingness to draw near to all things. But
Yeah. I don't think that in Nibbana is non-experience. There isn't one who could possibly be near or close because it is completely signless.
yes,
And when
exactly.
signlessness arises, that means signlessness here and signlessness there, and there's no
Yes,
way to even feel that there is a closeness or a separation.
yes. And fortunately, I've had those experiences, and especially Christina Feldman, my other guiding teacher, or the same one, I guess, that I mentioned, uh, also took about 2 years, almost 2 years with me, one-on-one, long distance, to teach me the jhanas.
Mm.
And, so again,
So, Kanti, is there,
yeah,
if there's a question, please ask your question so that we can allow some time for other folks, okay?
okay, I better stop because I am cognitively impaired. So I'm going to,
Okay. No, it's a beautiful conversation. Thank you. I just want to make sure that we allow time for everybody who has a question or a reflection. Thank you, Kanti. That's good. It was helpful for you to bring that forward. Brad, were you? Please.
I was just thinking of the Buddha speaking to Bahia or Bahia, when in the seeing,
Here.
when in the seeing only the seen, when in the hearing only the heard, when in the cognized only the cognized, by that you will not be. Then there will be no you here, no you there, and no you in between.
Mm-hmm.
Atamayata, not made of
Mm-hmm.
this, not formed of this, not formed of anything.
Mm-hmm.
What a practice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing that crossed my mind at some point during your talk was the Buddha saying to Mara, Mara's throwing everything at him, rage, anger, lust, and the Buddha said something like, you can take your stand in those things. I take my stand in non-aversion to anything that arises in the embodied experience, something to that effect.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes, I would agree, Brad. I think that those are a couple of examples of the Buddha speaking about his equanimity based on non-identification, right? His ultimate equanimity. Yeah, beautiful. And what Brad was saying there, not made of this, that's the literal translation of atamayata, that Pali word. That is said to be the quality that on which we can develop that ultimate equanimity of all things as mere phenomena. Yeah. Great. Yes, Joseph, you're still muted. Oh, okay, there you go.
Yes, but I'm sorry, I didn't know your name. It's just, oh, you unmuted now. Sorry. Okay. I have a question about Vedana because I have some trouble with Vedana. I notice, or I'm in contact with the Vedana I have as a result. So, like, I can say I feel uncomfortable now, or something like that. But But then I have to go back to see how it started. But my awareness is never like what's coming up next. It's more like what happened, and now I can give it Vedana. So yeah, I don't know how to establish more this pre-awareness of the Vedana that will come next. Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yep. It's a helpful reflection there, Joso. Thank you for sharing that. And the only advice I can give you there is mindfulness. It's the continuity of mindfulness, right? So if we understand the mind stream as a series of moments, right? Each moment has its quality there. So you have the Vedana comes together with the contact, at least that's how the Buddha spoke about it, right? And then there is, as you noticed, there's a perception, and then there's a response or a reaction, and then you can kind of roll it back and look. But if your mindfulness has a little bit more continuity, or your mindfulness is catching more of those moments within the stream, then you might land on the Vedana itself, the moment of the contact itself with the Vedana. So it's really just a matter of establishing the continuity of mindfulness as best you can. And, that's just practice. That's I would say concentration practice usually helps with that. But for some people, it can also develop in Vipassana practice. It's not necessarily based in one or the other, but concentration practice is the most common way of developing that persistence of the mind. Because you're giving your mind a break by trying to just even watch one thing, right? And that way, a break in the sense of that it might be easier to maintain the continuity, right? Because you're just pointing, essentially is what's actually happening. Even if you don't feel it that way, what's actually happening is the attention pointing at the same phenomena or the same type of phenomena, right? As it's changing. Hopefully that makes sense. Yes, okay, beautiful. So we are at our time, and that means, Dana, it's time for the announcement if you would like to make it.
Okay. The practice of giving and receiving has been a part of Buddhism since its inception. Giving to the Dassanaya Buddhist Community supports our guiding teacher, Dhammadīpā, the physical location at the vihara, and allows us to continue to offer Buddhist teachings in support of the awakening of all beings. Our support pages on the website under the support tabs offer several ways to donate. Thank you so much.
Thank you, dear Dana, for your support by doing that. And thanks to everyone who is making this a community. It's beautiful. And may the merits of our practice here today be a cause and a condition for great clarity in ourselves and in others, that we and all beings might find our equanimity, our peace with what is. By the power of the Buddhas, the Dhamma and the Sangha, and each one's efforts, may all beings be liberated. All right, dear friends, have a beautiful rest of your day.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye, Brad.